Every era believes it understands the world it inhabits. Every generation assumes the headlines tell the full story. But history has never been written in headlines. It has been written in quiet rooms, in classified briefings, in handshakes the cameras were never meant to see. Power does not announce itself. It recalibrates. It negotiates. It pressures. It waits. Wars rarely begin the day they are declared. Economies rarely collapse the day they falter. Alliances rarely fracture the day they disagree. The visible world is only the surface tension. Beneath it lies architecture, strategy layered upon strategy, incentives disguised as ideals, silence masking movement. This is not a channel of outrage. It is a channel of analysis. Here, we examine the fault lines before they rupture. We trace the signals before they become sirens. We decode the calculus behind global decisions. Because geopolitics is not chaos. It is structure under stress. And when the structure shifts, the world shifts with it. Welcome to Twisted Chapter, where power is not merely observed. It is understood. Chapter 1. The announcement that changed the atmosphere. In geopolitics, words are rarely accidental. They are measured, timed, calculated. And when a government uses the phrase ordered departure instead of advised caution, the distinction is not semantic, it is strategic. Recently, the United States instructed certain personnel and citizens to leave parts of Egypt, Israel, and key Gulf states. Not suggested, not recommended, ordered. The question is not simply what happened. The deeper question is, what changed behind the scenes? Evacuations at this level are not reactions to headlines. They are responses to intelligence, classified briefings, satellite movements, intercepted communications, strategic assessments that never make front-page news. When Washington triggers coordinated departures across multiple countries simultaneously, it signals one of three things. Intelligence indicating imminent instability, escalation risks between regional actors, a recalibration of threat assessment thresholds, and the geographic spread is what makes this extraordinary. Egypt, Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. These are not isolated arenas. They are pillars of regional architecture. When multiple pillars vibrate at once, the structure itself feels the tremor. This is not about panic. It is about precaution driven by intelligence. But precaution for what? To understand that, we must examine the strategic pressure building across the region. Chapter 2. The regional chessboard. Pressure without open war. The Middle East does not operate on simplicity. It operates on layers. On the surface, there is diplomacy, summits, ceasefire negotiations, public statements of restraint. Beneath that surface lies deterrence theory, missile ranges, proxy forces, naval positioning. And beneath that, shadow conflict. Consider the tension corridor stretching from Gaza to the Red Sea, from southern Lebanon to the Strait of Hormuz. Iran remains a central strategic variable, projecting influence through non-state actors while maintaining plausible deniability. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, maritime disruptions in the Red Sea. Each flashpoint may appear independent. They are not. They form a pressure arc around Israel and its partners. Now at a fragile ceasefire environment. Add retaliatory strikes. Add miscalculation risk. And suddenly, evacuation orders begin to look less surprising. Because governments do not wait for ignition when they smell fuel in the air. What is critical here is not necessarily that war is imminent, but that volatility thresholds have lowered. When volatility increases, embassies become vulnerable. Tourist hubs become soft targets. Military bases become symbolic lightning rods. The evacuation order is not a declaration of conflict. It is an acknowledgement that risk models have shifted. Chapter 3. Egypt's strategic position, the quiet variable. Egypt occupies a uniquely delicate position in the geopolitical architecture of the Middle East. Not as the loudest actor, not as the most militarily dominant, but as the quiet stabilizer whose choices often determine whether crises remain contained or spiral outward. Geography has conferred upon Egypt both privilege and burden. It borders Gaza directly through the Rafah crossing, the only gateway into Gaza not controlled by Israel. That single border point transforms Egypt into a humanitarian corridor, a security gatekeeper, and a political intermediary all at once. Every escalation between Israel and Palestinian factions immediately reverberates through Egyptian security calculations. But geography grants Egypt something even more consequential: the Suez Canal, a slender ribbon of water carved through desert, yet one of the most critical arteries of the global economy. Roughly 12% of global trade transits this canal, including energy shipments from the Gulf to Europe and commercial goods linking Asia to Western markets. A disruption in Suez does not merely affect the Middle East. It recalibrates shipping costs, energy prices, insurance markets, and supply chains across continents. This makes Egypt not simply a regional actor, but a structural pillar of global stability. Now layer onto that strategic geography the political equilibrium Egypt must maintain. Since the signing of the Camp David Accords and the formal peace treaty between Egypt and Israel, Cairo has served as a mediator in countless ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. It is one of the few regional actors able to communicate with all sides: Israeli officials, Palestinian leadership, Gulf monarchies, and Western diplomats alike. Yet this diplomatic positioning exists alongside a deeply sympathetic Egyptian public sentiment toward Palestinian suffering. Governments can sign treaties, societies carry memory, and public pressure is never irrelevant in moments of regional escalation. This creates a tightrope. Egypt must preserve regional peace, protect its economic interests, maintain international alliances, particularly with the United States, and simultaneously manage domestic expectations in a highly sensitive environment. If instability spills across borders, Egypt becomes both mediator and buffer. But buffers can absorb only so much pressure before structural stress becomes visible. And that is where the internal equation matters. Egypt's economy has faced significant strain in recent years. Inflation has surged, placing pressure on household purchasing power. The Egyptian pound has experienced repeated devaluations, eroding savings and increasing import costs. Youth unemployment remains persistently high, a demographic reality in a country where a substantial portion of the population is under 30. These factors do not cause conflict, but they amplify vulnerability. Economic fragility reduces a government's margin for error. It constrains fiscal flexibility. It heightens public sensitivity to external shocks, whether from disrupted tourism, increased fuel costs, or regional insecurity. In such an environment, even a contained regional escalation can have disproportionate internal effects. A surge of displaced civilians toward the Rafah crossing would not merely be a humanitarian challenge. It would become a logistical, economic, and political test. A disruption in Red Sea shipping routes would not merely impact global markets. It would impact Egypt's canal revenues, a vital source of foreign currency. And foreign currency is the oxygen of import-dependent economies. For Washington, ensuring the safety of American citizens in Egypt is therefore not about predicting collapse. It is not an assumption of imminent breakdown. It is a recognition of interconnected risk. When a country controls a maritime choke point essential to global trade, borders an active conflict zone, and navigates domestic economic strain, contingency planning becomes not alarmist, but prudent. Strategic planners in Washington understand a simple truth: regional escalation does not remain geographically contained. It ripples through energy markets, through shipping lanes, through currency valuations, through public sentiment. And when choke points are involved, precaution is not optional. It is mandatory. Egypt, in this unfolding equation, is not the headline. It is the hinge. And in geopolitics, hinges often determine the direction of the door. Chapter 4. Israel at the epicenter. Israel is currently operating under sustained security strain. Missile threats from multiple directions, internal political divisions, international scrutiny, proxy confrontation risks. But the critical factor is not any single battlefield. It is multi-front potential. Modern conflict is no longer linear. It is simultaneous. Drones from one direction, cyber disruptions from another, naval harassment and trade routes, rocket fire calibrated for psychological impact. In such an environment, diplomatic personnel and non-essential civilians represent exposure. Evacuation orders are not judgments on a nation's stability. They are insurance policies against escalation surprises. When intelligence agencies detect patterns, even ambiguous ones, they act before confirmation becomes catastrophe. Because in national security doctrine, delay can be fatal. Chapter 5. The Gulf Factor and the Global Implications. The Gulf states are energy arteries. Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar. They sit beside the Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 1/5 of global oil flows. Any perceived threat in that corridor reverberates through energy markets, insurance premiums, shipping routes, global inflation. Even rumors can spike oil prices. Now imagine intelligence suggesting increased maritime risk. Evacuation in such contexts is strategic signaling. It communicates three things simultaneously. We are aware. We are preparing. We will not be caught off guard. This is not merely about citizens abroad. It is about deterrence posture. When the United States adjusts its civilian footprint, adversaries take note. It is a silent broadcast. We see the board clearly. The most dangerous periods in geopolitics are not open wars. They are transitional phases, when deterrence frameworks are recalibrating and actors test boundaries. Right now, the Middle East exists in such a phase. The evacuation order does not confirm war, but it confirms uncertainty. And uncertainty, in strategic theory, is combustible. The real trigger may not be a single event. It may be cumulative risk, escalation cycles, proxy entanglements, maritime disruptions, intelligence warnings unseen by the public. History teaches us that governments rarely evacuate in anticipation of calm. They evacuate when probabilities shift beyond acceptable thresholds. The world is not necessarily on the brink, but it is certainly in motion. And when superpowers move their civilians, it means the chessboard is being rearranged. Quietly, the world does not change in explosions alone. It changes in recalculations, in strategic withdrawals, in silent deployments, in decisions that appear small, until their consequences are not. Behind every crisis lies a framework. Behind every framework lies an interest. And behind every interest lies a choice. The question is never simply what happened. The deeper question is, what pressures made it inevitable? What alliances are strengthening in the shadows? What rivalries are hardening beneath diplomacy? And which chapter of history are we quietly entering next? In an age of noise, clarity is power. In an age of speed, patience is strategy. In an age of narratives, analysis is leverage. Stay observant. Stay critical. Stay intellectually armed. If you found this analysis insightful, subscribe to Twisted Chapter, where we decode global power shifts before they reach the headlines. Because in geopolitics, the most important stories are rarely the loudest. They are the ones unfolding behind closed doors. And the next shift in global power is already underway.